So every other day we hear the word blockchain, 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 but what exactly is a blockchain? Well, you can think of blockchains as a kind of shared database that differs from a regular database in the way that it actually stores this data or information. So blockchains tend to store data in blocks. They're called blocks and they're linked together through cryptography, which is where you get the word crypto from. Anyway, as the new data comes in, it's entered into a fresh block, and once a block is filled with data, it's chained onto the previous block, which makes the data chain together in chronological order, which is where the chain of blocks comes in. So, different kinds of information can be stored on a blockchain, but the most common use of a blockchain so far is definitely a ledger for transaction, especially financial transactions. In the case of Bitcoin, a really popular case, blockchain is used in a decentralized way so that no single person or group has control. Rather, every single user collectively retains control. So, a decentralized blockchain is basically immutable, and that means that most data entered is basically irreversible. And for the example of Bitcoin, it means that transactions are basically permanently recorded and viewable to literally anyone around the world. A very simple analogy to understand how blockchain actually works is basically think of a Google Doc, right? You can share a Google Doc with somebody without necessarily copying and pasting the same file elsewhere. You simply distribute it to other people. But when you distribute it, those other people are able to make real-time changes, and each person that has access to that Google Doc can see all the changes being made, and you can collaboratively make changes on that very same document, and you're very aware of every change that's made to that document. And it could be you and one person, it could be you and 10 people simultaneously making changes to a Google Doc at the same time, and you can retain the same permissions. Each and every one of you on that document can retain all the same permissions and also make real-time changes on that very same document. And that's just one of the little analogies you can use to understand blockchain. Of course, a blockchain is far more complicated than Google Doc. Let me give another analogy. So let's say you have a file of transactions on your computer, and let's say some accountants have the very same file on their computer, and all of you have access to that very same file. And when you make a transaction, your computer sends an email to each of those accountants to inform them of this transaction. Now, each accountant basically rushes to be the first to check whether you can actually afford to make this transaction, and let's just say and be paid their salary. And the first to check and validate this hits a reply all button, which will validate their logic for basically verifying this transaction. And if the other accountant agrees, everyone will update their file. And this concept is basically what is enabled by what we call blockchain technology. You will be the node, your computer will be the ledger, the distributed ledger, which is the actual blockchain, and the accountants will be the ones who are called miners. And this form where you and the accountant have access to this very same ledger is essentially what the blockchain facilitates, just like in the case of a Google Doc, in which you all have decentralized access to the very same document. This is a decentralized ledger, and that's basically the way blockchains work.